Do you want to know what the end of the enlightened vision is? I have seen it. The end of the vision is quite simply that man would be freed from all external and internal authorities and be able to develop naturally along the path of this freedom. This sounds like a noble cause to one who does not realize the ramifications of such a goal. For what the enlightened modern man would call freedom, our sober ancient fathers knew by the much more creative term of anarchy. For this enlightened vision has two major enemies. First, reality. The call for freedom from external and internal authorities is really only a call for a new type of authority. If they would no longer have a king tyrannizing them for its own benefit, they will have a faceless bureaucracy tyrannizing them for its own benefit. If they would not have God telling them how to live, they would have the evil one telling them how to die, or how to not die at that. If they would not have the tradition of history telling them what is normal humanity, they will have the newest scientific theory telling them what is normal bestiality. Thus, reality tells them they are permitted to throw off the old authorities, but they are not allowed to throw off authority. For even anarchy has an authority, the authority of chaos, commanding to destroy order. And thus they destroy the order of history. By rejecting their fathers' traditions, they destroy the order of the soul by being enslaved to their lusts without shame. They destroy the order of righteous law by creating a political bureaucracy, a corporate political bureaucracy. They destroy the order of God by making themselves idols. But reality is not the only enemy of the enlightened vision, for there is also the enemy of human nature. For human nature can be denied and attempted to be changed, but it can never be conquered by a mere man. For the gravest miscalculation of the enlightened man is that he denied the existence of Hitler 200 years before World War II. And what is worse, his enlightened children continue to deny him 70 years after World War II. The enlightened man must turn his eyes from the prisons and the ghettos, the endless wars in the Middle East, the bloody 20th century, the hungry in Africa, the oppression in Mexico, the politicians in Washington, his next-door neighbor, even his own heart. You see, the enlightened man must pretend all of these do not exist if he is to truly have a system where man is free to follow his impulses without any answer to an external tradition or an internal law of God written upon the heart. For the vision calls for man to make his own paradise, not by using the tools of the past, but by molding new tools from the depths of his own nature. For if he will not look to the church or to tradition, much less to Scripture, to form his world and life, he has nowhere else to look but the depths of his own heart. He has nowhere to flee but the recesses of his own mind. His preferences must be codified. His impulses must dictate policy. His desires must become the new tablets of morality. And yet, the very reason that our ancestors believed in order was because they had learned quite well from their fathers, from their priests, and from their own hearts, that for man to truly be free, he must be freed from the passions that enslave him. What the modern man calls his self and being true to himself, the ancient man called the passions which would enslave a man. For it is from the heart of man that evil comes. Atheists and weak Christians always ask where evil comes from, when it is all too empirical and obvious that it comes from the heart of man. From this heart comes hate and lust, covetousness and greed, envy and idolatry. And from these desires come murder and adultery, stealing and consuming, bitterness and selfishness. These are the true tyrants of mankind, and these are what the people have chosen to rule over them. And in doing so, they have not been freed from internal authority, for sin reigns over them. And from sin, they have created an external world which dictates to them that the only thing they are allowed to be are shells of the robust humanity that built the civilization they are consuming and destroying. Our fathers knew all too well that they needed God, the church, and true law so that they would be saved from each other and from themselves, and so that the children would be protected. And moreover, by living under these authorities, they knew they had a chance to live in true freedom, as those no longer enslaved to the tyrant that is sin working in the heart of man. They desired a true peace and communion between one another, not a communion of lust with lust and preference with preference, but a communion of freed men, men who together were at war against sin and who worshipped the only one who had conquered it and would finally destroy it. You see, our fathers may have wanted to be freed from a certain earthly tyrant, but never would they have dreamed of being freed from authority. They longed for it. For when the real authority of all creation came, the world would finally be free. These miscalculations, based on the romantic impulses of the enlightened man, is why the enlightened vision failed. Because the enlightened man built his vision on a faulty premise of human nature and inserted this premise into an unreal world that did not and cannot exist. And here we live, in a fabricated society that has happily enslaved itself to a tyrant that our fathers fought so hard to protect us from, in a nightmare that those godly priests of the past prayed so devoutly that we would not be led into. And now, what is left but to pick up the mantle of our fathers and to fight the occupier and to pray as earnestly as those godly men before us that we would be delivered from this death of our own choosing. Our God has been merciful before. In his mercy let us rest, and in his strength let us confide. For it may be that he would free us again if we would cry out to him for the freedom he gives, the freedom to be human again.